it's not a matter of what will go wrong. It's when it will go wrong. And things will go wrong. Absolutely. Something will go wrong, whether it's tech,
Yeah.
whether it's co-facilitator. I guess, like I said, we've both been doing this for long enough that we're just, all right, let's just keep going. We'll see what happens.
Welcome back to the Spark Connect. So, what do jazz, virtual training, and facilitation have in common? Way more than you think. Today, I'm talking with Gordon Lam, and this conversation is all about creativity, authenticity, and learning to adapt in the moment. We get into mistakes, humor, preparation, and why the audience almost never notices the thing that you're stressing out about. If you've ever wanted to bring more ease and creativity into your sessions, this one swings. Gordon Lam, we're here with you today. I'm so excited. We're finally meeting, and I just can't wait to learn more from you and about you. And I'm just so excited for the audience to hear too. So without further ado, tell us about you, introduce yourself. What is your form of artistry? And also, what kind of work do you do in our wonderful world of learning and development?
It is great to see you again. I was trying to remember like how we first met, but I guess we'll get into that in a little bit. All right. So I am a recovering instructional designer and and a corporate trainer for one of the big four accounting firms. As far as my art goes, I have been playing, I think we just talked about this, jazz piano, keyboards, whatever you want to say, a little bit of rock and roll for like over 4 decades, learned as a teenager. And even if I just don't feel right, like if I know I'm feeling a little weird for a couple of days, that means I haven't gone and played piano for a little bit. And that sort of centers me a little bit.
Oh, that is so cool. I'm trying to remember when we first met too. Let's address the first met, and then I want to get into the jazz and piano and improv and all of that. But it has been a long time. You have been doing facilitating and learning, I think longer than me actually, Gordon. But you and I have known each other for quite a while. Do you remember how we first met?
I think we first met probably at a training conference because I used to do that a lot more, presented at conferences. So maybe e-learning guild conference or ASTD or something like that.
Yeah. Ooh, vintage ASTD.
Yeah, ATD.
Taking it to the
I didn't
way
say
back
that.
times.
Yeah.
It's exactly right. I love that. Yeah, but I've always been around as a fellow presenter, and you're making the waves and teaching people. And what I've always felt is a very fun and exciting and energetic way, because every time I've ever seen you present, we're always highly involved. And when we did this podcast and you sent me your bio, I'm like, this makes sense. Why did I not know more about this? But recently we were at a conference this last year, and you reminded me, you told me, I've never taught the same way in the exact same form. I've never taught 2 classes in the same way. And when I read your bio and the specific kind of artistry that you bring into the world, I was like, of course, when a jazz musician takes the training stage, we are not going to get something that is planned and specific and running the exact way every single time, are we?
No, but you shouldn't either. I mean, as a facilitator, it's your job. Well, first of all, going back to the music side of things, I am a terrible reader of music. I don't feel so bad because I hear like Paul McCartney can't read music either, too. So not, but a lot of famous people can't. But I'm really, really bad at. I could read the fake books. I think they're typically called, like so it has the chords and the melody line. But I am terrible at reading music, which means I almost always have to play something. Every single time I play, it's going to be a little bit different. But on the
I think you're
facilitators,
alone.
yeah, I don't think so either. But on the facilitator side, look, it doesn't matter how many times you do that same class. And as a corporate trainer, sometimes I have to do the same class 2, 3, 4 times in a row or once a week for many weeks. It's a different audience. It's a different feeling. Sometimes, this, Kassy, sometimes the audience is great and they're involved and they're interested and they're having a conversation. You really, truly feel like a facilitator. And then sometimes you feel like a dentist, right? And you're just trying to pull teeth just to get somebody to say something.
I think about By the way, no hate to the dentists, right?
No,
It's
oh,
just that
absolutely
if you're
not.
trying to deliver a training and then, you're at the dentist, they don't go together, but I get that. But I think it's so interesting because, the first thing that you open with is I don't know how to read music, but it's like you know how to feel it though, Gordon. And I've seen you do the same thing as a trainer. And what you've just described, you're feeling and able to read with such a level of comfort. That's actually incredible. Every time I've ever seen you presenting, you're just going with it. And how much of that is connected to, like, were you always like that as a kid, and that's what led you towards playing piano and keyboard in the jazz and blues style, or did you figure out another way?
Well, would it surprise you if I told you I was one of the class clowns?
No.
No. So I'm also an only child, so I'm all about the center of attention no matter what I'm doing, right? And I always found it so fascinating that people were, that my fellow classmates when I was a kid were afraid to like get up in front of people. In fact, I got into magic when I was a kid. I went to magic camp. How nerdy does that sound when I was a kid? Um, I got into that. I always wondered when I was a kid why all the girls would be dancing together and all the guys would be lined up on the back wall. And I was like, no, come on, let's go out there and dance. So I have no problem being in front of 5 people, 500, 5,000. Doesn't matter to me. But you still have to prep.
So you're obviously an artist who found training. And so tell us about how you got into playing the piano as a kid, and the keyboard as well. Did you start keyboard or piano?
Keyboard. In fact, I was just looking up, see if I can find a picture. The very, very first keyboard I had was called a Magnus 22 key organ. You plugged it into the wall, and when you turned it on, it would go the whole time. And every time you changed like a note, it would go click, pop, click, pop, click, pop. So that wasn't working. But my dad used to actually drive me all the way from Queens. I grew up in New York City into Manhattan to the Steinway store on off Fifth Avenue and 59th Street, and they gave free lessons back then. And then I think my uncle was moving, and he was giving away his piano, and so we ended up with a piano. I ended up taking piano lessons, and it was kind of the classic thing. They wanted to teach me Beethoven, and I wanted to play Beatles.
What happens when they want to teach you Beethoven and you want Beatles? What ends up happening? Do you learn the Beatles anyway?
Yeah, kind of. And I remember the one and only piano instructor that I had was always, "You're not playing the notes. I know, but it's better if I play it this way." And
Yeah.
I don't want to say I get in trouble, but I have been known to have, as a facilitator, I say, Gordon, that exercise wasn't designed that way. I know, but doesn't it work better this way?
I was just going to
Doesn't it?
say, where has this played out in the training when we've been given these are the materials and you're like, and here's how I will do them. And how has that played out? And how have you managed that? Because clearly you're going to play it your own way.
Corporate training, especially a lot of the classes that I deliver are CPE certified, right? In accounting, you have to have a certain number of CPE credits. So you cannot change any content. You can't change anything on the slides. That has to be delivered slide by slide as it was written. But
Right.
that
For it to
doesn't,
count, right? And so many people, we're hanging on this next moment. So many people are in this situation where they have to deliver what has been provided, yet how do they still bring life into that? What is the secret? Are we about to have it revealed? No
yeah,
pressure.
I think well, you have to make it your own, right? And no matter what you're doing, it's if it doesn't sound like you when you're delivering it, if it doesn't sound like what you would say, then you're not going to be able to connect to it. And if you're not connecting to the content, the people that are attending your training aren't going to connect to the content, right? That's why I like telling one of the classes that I teach, and we have talked about this before, is train the trainer, like teaching facilitators or new people who haven't facilitated before how to be facilitators. And I tell them it's a leader's guide, it's not a leader's Bible. You don't have to do it word for word. It is just a guide to let you know, here's what you have to cover. Then it's up to you to figure out ways to cover it in a way that's engaging. Because if it's interesting to you and engaging for you, then that's going to translate to the audience. And I mean, you're one of the most engaging facilitators I've ever seen, so you know what I'm talking about. You know how to do that.
I've been through the same, thank you. And I've been through the same process though. It's like we have to provide you with a guide. It's not a Bible. And so the guide gives you a place to start. And I remember this, I think about our mutual friend, Jennifer Hoffman. And
Hmm.
when I was working with her a very long time ago, she had this wonderful story. It was about virtual training and connecting and making it all work no matter what. And I was in California at the time, and she is from New York, like yourself.
Hmm.
And she would tell the story because I was delivering her content when I first worked for her. And she would tell the story that she was in the Adirondacks and she was doing blah, blah, and got disconnected, blah, blah. It's a whole cool story. And so then in the beginning, when I was teaching that same program for her, I'd be like, I was in the and so I started saying Napa because I couldn't pronounce Adirondacks. I now live in New York, so I can pronounce it. But I started using Napa, but then it got to a point where I didn't even use that story at all. So the story was hers always, and I just learned from what the intention was, and then I found my own way to start telling a time when I was out of place, out of tech, but I still made it work. But I needed her stuff to get me going so I could learn it, but I had to find a way to make it my own and then continue on with it. And I think that's what we have to do with it. It's like the segment was still the same, the objective was the same. The exact words had to come from inside of my experience. And I think it's the way that you do that and the way that you remain compliant with the specific things that we have to deliver each day over and over again. Mm.
I know I said earlier that I was a recovering instructional designer, and I think, uh, and one of the things that anybody who's done any instructional design will tell you that in the history of the world, there has never been a course that was designed to have enough time to deliver all the content that's in the course. It just
Is that
goes
true?
without saying. I think it goes without, like, I can't tell you how often we're handed like PowerPoint decks and there's like 15 different bullet points on it and it says time 90 seconds, something like that. So it's always a matter of juggling and figuring out, okay, what am I going to lean into? What can I cover? How can I shorten this? How can I delve into that? Because this seems to be something that interests the learners, or they're at this level. I really don't need to cover more of this basic stuff. And for scaffolding, I could just jump right in here. So it's not even a matter of necessarily always making the content your own, but it's also determining what do you lean into? What content do you cover? What content has to maybe fall the wayside, or at least not get covered in the depth that you might want to? And that's the same thing with improvisation or playing jazz and such. I mean, you could play, the basic chord structure of something and then just keep noodling on it for indefinitely. But at some point, you need to bring things back to the core of what the topic was or the core of what the song is in order to move forward.
One of the things as I'm listening to you talk about how important it is for us to be able to, sort of play with the audience, read the audience, but then get back to it. There's so much about jazz and blues that's playing in there. And I'm just wondering, I want to go back to when you learned the piano and the keyboard and they were like, you got to do Beethoven. How does a person go about learning to play jazz and blues? Because isn't it known for doing its own thing? And, how do you learn that? I'm so interested.
They always say the best way is to learn by doing, and then an even better way is to teach it, right? When I was in junior high school, I think it was, there was another piano player. It was just the two of us, and we were doing. Remember, I don't know if they had this in your junior high school. High school, they had sing like at the end of the year, every class would do a production or something, right? So we were the only two piano players, and so we would teach each other little techniques that we had learned to sort of, I guess you could call it improv. And then, of course, listening to other people play and being intimidated by how good some other folks were. Ultimately, it's just a matter of trial and error. And again, with facilitating, you
Yeah,
you
I
try
was
you
just
try a
wondering that.
technique, right? You see if it
Like, how many
works.
times have you seen another trainer do something and you're like, I want to try that. I wonder if I could make that work in my class. And then you try it and it either is like, in my case, it'd be like, oh, that was amazing. Or that totally failed. And that was embarrassing, but the willingness to try. But I'm always inspired by other trainers and other techniques. And it's one of my favorite things to go see other people and get inspired by that for that very reason.
Absolutely, absolutely. One of the things I end when I do that trainer class, one of the things that I end with is to tell people, look, we all get invited to a whole bunch of these free webinars on topics, right? Attend one or two of them, or three or four of them, and just watch a few minutes. Watch what the facilitator does. If there's something that they like, I'm not going to say steal it, but incorporate it into your bag of tricks. And if you see something that they did that maybe didn't go off so well, that's something maybe you can try to avoid doing.
I know. I feel very lucky, like having a career in virtual training. The thing that I was trying to do didn't exist. And so I had no other choice but to be like, okay, this is what we were doing in person. Here's what we're going to try to do using this tool.
Sure.
And there's a lot of examples of that. It actually probably formed the basis for why I wrote the book I did.
Hmm. Back
Yeah.
back in the day, one of the jobs I had, I worked for. You remember the American Management Association? At the time, they were the
Yeah.
world's largest management training organization, and I was working with them developing e-learning stuff. And they did all their training in the classroom. And me and my colleague at the time, Deirdre Waters, who I'm still friends with, amazing trainer facilitator, um, we made a pitch to the senior folks at the company to convert one of their classes to virtual. We said, we took like the first part of one of the lessons of the most popular course. We showed them how it might be delivered. We said we thought this was going to be a great delivery model. And they were, nope, nope, not going to do it.
Really?
Not going to
When
do
was
it.
this?
We are all about classroom training. And then there was the big financial meltdown. Nobody was sending anybody to training anymore. And about a year after that, I ran into the CEO. I won't mention his name, but I said, "Hey, how you doing?" And he said, "I want you to know, 40% of our revenue now is virtual training, and I wish I had listened to you back then."
Wow. So they obviously decided to do it after that, but there was so much resistance, quote, back in the day. It's different now. People, maybe they're bored and wanting excitement and engagement, but they know it's now part of their regular thing. In fact, I was just in a meeting today. We were talking about, I don't think it's called virtual training anymore. It's just training.
Just training.
Yeah. For in-person, virtual, hybrid, all the different ways. It's expected now that it'll be delivered in all the different ways, part of almost any program. So I actually am kind of excited about that, even though it brings some new challenges, in different ways of thinking. I'm excited about it. We're transforming, aren't we?
Well, it's never anyway about the delivery methodology, right? That was the whole thing about when they started measuring virtual versus traditional classroom was it's not the methodology, it's the delivery, it's the content, it's the design that makes the difference.
Right. Yeah. It's like, I know how many times it's like, oh, virtual's bad. And it's like, I think it might have been your questions or lack thereof,
Hmm.
or your debrief or lack thereof, or your setup or lack thereof. It might not have been at all the online part. It might have been the other things that you weren't doing in person either. So now we've called attention to it because we tried to blame the tech when in reality it was the choices being made using the tech.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah.
It's people are learning so much. That's one of the things that's been excited about my particular career is that it makes people like focusing in on the tech helps people learn that they should be focusing in on all the other things that matter, just as you mentioned. And that, oh, maybe it was that all along. And it was the tech that made me pay attention in a different way that makes more sense to me today. It's exciting.
Yeah, absolutely. And then once whether whatever delivery platform you're using, whether it's Teams, whether it's Zoom, once you start practicing it and using it, and the tech starts to sort of fall into the background, that's when you can really start focusing on the delivery side. And that's why, what they say, the three keys to real estate are location, location, location. So the three keys to facilitation is just preparation or practice, 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 however you want to say it.
Yeah. So as a musician, you bring so much to the table already with practice being part of a normal part of life.
Well, I was saying before this that I was nervous, right? And you were saying, I'm a little bit nervous too. I am. Doesn't matter how many times I've delivered classes, doesn't matter how many times I've performed. I am always really, really nervous at the beginning of the session. So for me, it's all about what's that first 10 minutes? Have it down so it doesn't matter what happens. I could deliver it in a closet with the lights off and nobody there. And if I can get through that, then the
I'll
flow
be good.
starts and then it'll be good. Yeah. Or at least as
Is
good
it
as
the
I can
same
make it.
practice
Right?
that you apply to the music as well?
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. It's just making sure that I know the intro, who's doing what, if I'm playing with other folks, what they're supposed to be doing, what I'm supposed to be doing, and then not get thrown, right? Because
Yeah.
um, mistakes happen, right? When you're playing music, I can't tell you how many times I come off stage. I'd be playing with a band and I'd be like, "Oh man, we made that, that third song. We did this. I can't believe we forgot the verse. We did this. We played the wrong chord." Nobody notices that stuff.
No one
Nobody
notices.
know.
We have
Nobody.
no idea. Audience members are so clueless. They're just like, were they enjoying themselves? Were they laughing? Were they moving and dancing? They do not know unless you call it out and then we go, what weirdos? We don't understand.
And it's the same thing with facilitating, right? Most of the
Yeah.
time, they don't know if you made a mistake, and as long as when you do it, as long as you cop to it, not try to ignore it, and then just keep going, then
And then that displays some vulnerability and then they connect with you and it's more endearing to them and ultimately then more engaging.
yeah.
This entire talk is making me think about the last time I saw you in person. I thought you had a whole thing planned, but you're telling me that your art transformed your training in that moment. And you still need to convince me that you're telling me the truth right now. But something happened the last time I saw you.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
and
yeah. You okay?
and it pulls from your skills as a piano player and jazz musician here. So let's hear it, Gordon. What happened?
Yeah. So I was at it was the Training Magazine conference, right, in
Yes.
Orlando, and with my colleague who had never presented in front of folks before, in that context. She had never presented at a conference before. She was a facilitator, Carolyn Reyes, who's amazing, by the way. So we had rehearsed. We were in the room. It was a big room. There was like 300 people in that room, including my friend Kassy. And we had just started our presentation. We got the podium up there. The slides are up there. And I go to use my clicker to advance to the next slide, and clicker is nowhere to be found. So I'm doing this, I'm doing this. And Carolyn, to her credit, just jumped right in and said, "Hey," because we were talking about a class about facilitation. So we were saying, this is real life. This is what happens. You have to learn to adapt. We were going to change the slides from up on the podium, and we had been working around the room. So we asked the audience, look around on the tables, look under the floor, see if you can find this remote control thing. And then as I was doing this, I reached and it was in my back pocket. And I pulled it out of my back pocket and I found it. The whole room went for applause, right? A whole bunch of applause. And at least 10 to 20% of the feedback forms that people wrote were, "What, that was great that you lost your remote. That really set the stage for a really interesting thing. What a great act you put on."
I was at the table and I turned to the people that were with me and I'm like, he is putting this on as a demonstration of how you survive no matter what. And you are here today to set the record straight. That was not an act.
It was not an act. I
However,
couldn't.
it will be in the future. Always part of
I
the
don't know if I
act.
could pull it off quite that well because, yes, as music and acting are interdependent of each other. I would say, but it certainly did make for an interesting presentation, and things went really, really well from there.
Well, that you were so real in that moment. We're seeing this is how somebody who's a professional at a conference with hundreds of people still able to present and engage us and roll with it. And so the lesson that we got to learn and see demonstrated was golden. It's interesting to me that we were talking about in the earlier part of this interview that you make sure that the first 10 minutes are perfect and that's how you're managing your own nerves, which I too, by the way, I'm always really nervous. It's ridiculous. I'm hoping for the day that I'm never nervous, but I don't think it's part of my body makeup. It's awful that it happened to you in the first 10 minutes. And so like, how do you get through that? Like what did you fall back on that allowed you to get through it? Because you were mentioning that maybe it had something to do with the music training.
I think it's just a matter of, again, the thing was rehearsed to the nth degree. We knew what was supposed to happen. We knew how the flow was supposed to go. It's not a matter of what will go wrong. It's when it will go wrong. And things will go wrong. Absolutely. Something will go wrong, whether it's tech, whether it's co-facilitator or something. I guess, like I said, we've both been doing this for long enough that we're just, all right, let's just keep going. We'll see what happens. We can recover from this.
And it's okay, right? I think that what you bring as a musician is that you're used to creating an experience for people in that moment with whatever may be. And of course, you've planned for that experience, but then it's going to take on a life of its own every single time. And you have so much experience with that that you can bring it into the classroom too. And I think that as trainers, we can get in our head on like, this is what was supposed to happen. This is what I have to do. This is what is written. But when we can learn all of that, I like to say, get it in our bones, you're learning it so that you can let go of it and lean into the experience of what's in front of you given any moment. And that's how you get through that.
I like that. I like that. Learning it so you can put it behind you and then just do what it is that bring your authentic self into to whatever it is that you're delivering.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like
I
that.
think the key word is learning it. You've learned it, not memorized it.
Mm.
Because when you're working from memory, you're trying to say the thing, do the thing, stand in the place. But when you've learned it, you know that the saying of the things and the doing of the things all equal something. And maybe you have to come at a different way because the tech won't work or the people came late or
So method
you know.
facilitating as opposed to method acting. Is that what you're getting
Method
at?
facilitating as opposed to method acting. Or maybe they're both one and the same.
So, so,
Yeah.
but I do think it does all come back to authenticity. I mean, you and I have met in not this context and just, one to one. And I will tell you folks, the Kassy that you're seeing right here is the Kassy that you will see if you met her on the street or had lunch with her and same here, And in fact, if I sent you a corporate email from my email address, it would say, Gordon Lam, Master Facilitator, and then I have a quote by Oscar Wilde at the bottom of my signature line. It says, "Be yourself, everyone else is taken." And I am a firm believer, if you can be yourself, then people will connect with you. And if they connect with you, they will connect with the content. And if they connect with the content, then, from a corporate training perspective, these are people who are very, very busy. Literally, they could be working 24/7, 365 and not get everything done. So they're taking time away from what they should be doing. I know training is something that they should be doing too, but to attend something that they hope at the end of this, they will know something more or be able to do something different that's going to make their lives easier and make their work lives more productive. And as long as they leave with that, then it's a successful session. And if they don't, then that's on me. That's not on them.
It's like you're getting to the why. A lot of times we get caught up in the what, maybe even the how. But what you're leaning into is the why. And I think that's where we find ways to create experiences for people,
Yeah, I heard a quote, actually, and you probably heard this before, one of my co-facilitators, teammates said, be the thermometer, not a thermostat. Have you heard that before?
I haven't heard that exactly that way, but I love that.
Yeah, so you want to be aware of the, just in air quotes, temperature of the room and adjust accordingly to whatever it is that the audience needs from you, versus being the thermostat, versus setting something that's not going to change and then forcing people to live at that temperature or the session to go that way.
Yeah, it's about flow rather than just reading it. You're not processing it. You're actually like doing something with that reading and going with it. I think that's really interesting. It's also our responsibility though, isn't it? Like to set the temperature, but then be able to like move within that too. Because if someone doesn't respond to it, ooh, too hot, coming in too hot, like dial it back. You weren't ready for the tea.
Not that you and I would know anything about dialing it back though, right?
I don't know anything about that, but that's so funny. I think it's so interesting. We bring so much of our creative self to work, and some people are more confident doing that than others. And one of the things I'm so interested about sharing through these series of interviews is just how we do that in ways that are successful. Because in my own career, there was a lot of we get that you like to do theater and performance. But we don't necessarily want you to do that here at work. Nobody wants to do the vocal warm-ups cast or the theater games. But we do want our trainers to act and perform like you do. So I had to sort of dial back and not use the language. But in reality, it's like No, this is what we need to do. Let's free that. And I think people are a lot more open and accepting about that today. But I think there's a lot of us that are still navigating, like, how do I be my artistic self in a way that still works in the corporate environment? Have you ever gotten, Gordon, any feedback from people that are like, oh, you're being too much yourself?
Yeah. Anybody that fills out, smile sheets, level one stuff, then it's going to take the time to do it. It's either going to be the people that really, really liked you or the people that weren't exactly thrilled, right? And you kind of never know what you might say that could be taken in a way that you would never, ever expect it to be taken. You need to be a little bit thick-skinned, like anybody, any kind of performance. And we were talking about this before, facilitation is both art and science. So there is a performance aspect to it for sure. So you need to be able to ask for that feedback, then being able to take it on. And I mean, sure, I'm probably a little bit more carefree, happy-go-lucky outside of the classroom. It's still a corporate environment, so I still need to, like for example, use humor, but don't tell jokes. Right? Those are two distinctly different things.
That's so interesting. Why is that? As a facilitator slash trainer in the corporate world, use humor, don't tell jokes. That's a principle for you?
That's a principle for me. Well, one, first of all, often jokes have a certain cultural context to them that isn't necessarily translatable across multiple cultures. And since a lot of the training that I deliver isn't always global, but it's definitely Americas. So I have people from South America, Caribbean, Canada, and the US. I have to be wary of that. So rather than fall into the pitfalls of maybe an occasional dad joke, because those are relatively translatable, I try to be amusing, but not funny, as it were. Yeah.
Okay. I think that's a really good distinction. It's a good lesson, especially when we're teaching to a global audience and you're trying to be considerate. We have to know our audience. And a lot of times in the work that we do, our audience is, well, everyone at the whole company.
Yeah, absolutely.
You got to be careful with that. So cool. I think it's really interesting. You just naturally embody a jazz musician to me and a comedian to some extent, a class clown as you self-identified as such. And it plays out in such a joyful and effective and positive way as a facilitator, because I know that when I've attended your programs and I know other attendees, I was there, saw it happen more than once. I feel like I get to do whatever I need to do and I'm gonna be able to learn it in my own way. And I think that's such a beautiful thing that you bring to the audience. And I just think it's the coolest thing that jazz is what is coloring that, because it makes all the sense in the world. It's cool. Thank you for what you do for all of us, Gordon, and like just bringing so much joy to all the training that in the world. I love it that you get to do.
My heart's full. I'm overclamped, as it were. Thank you. That's so sweet of you to say. And you too, Kassy. I mean, watching you deliver is basically just watching a wizard at work. It really, really is. And for those of you who are out there in the audience watching this, if you get the opportunity to watch Kassy present, whether it's one of the courses that she runs or at a conference, please do it. Please do it. And then give her credit when you steal some of her techniques.
Thank you. Borrow and shine a light on, right? That's what we all do. Well, thank you very much for saying that. Gordon, where can people get a hold of you and best connect with you?
Sure. Well, you can always look me up in LinkedIn. So there are a few other Gordon Lams, but you could probably find me there. There's a famous actor named Gordon Lam, and people used to get his information when they searched for me.
Interesting.
And then I do have a website. I don't really do much with it anymore from back when I was a consultant. There's an expression called being on the lam, like running away. So my website's onthelam.com.
I love that. Of course, it needs to be onthelam.com. I love that. Thank you for your time today, and also for just all the joy that you bring and all the skill at the same time too, because, improv, being able to go with the flow, reading the room, losing a clicker in a back pocket and still making great experiences doesn't come because you have not prepared or you don't know what you're doing. It comes from exactly the opposite of that, and you are the embodiment of that. Thank you for sharing your wisdom today. That's your spark. Now go light something up. And hey, if this episode lit you up, share it with a friend, a fellow facilitator, or someone who needs a little more connection in their day. Be sure to follow the Spark Connect so you don't miss what's next. We've got more brilliant voices, bold ideas, and heart-forward conversations coming your way. Until then, stay curious, stay brave, and keep showing up.